Hello everyone. Lecture 4.4 for us, the affiliation need. So we're going to talk briefly about one attraction process that I particularly adore, and then we'll talk generally about affiliation, what we get from it, and then what happens when we fail to affiliate in terms of loneliness. And it looks like Rosie is about to affiliate with Desi, and I don't know that he's crazy about the idea, but we'll see how that goes for them. Or you won't. I know how it went. So, the need behind affiliation, straightforward affiliation according to Baumeister and Leary, basic human motive, right? And notice, this is on average. Some people are much stronger in their need to be affiliated than others, so we know that there's individual differences, but as social psychologists, we tend to talk on average, at least in our theorization. But too much affiliation can be too much, and as Aristotle said, moderation in all things, and I think that applies to affiliation as well. What we found, though, is humans are pretty good at affiliating and meeting that need. That is, I need to be with people, I need to affiliate, but then maybe I get over-affiliated or get to my proper level of affiliation, then I need some me time, some alone time, perhaps. And we know that we go back and forth through this. From affiliation, what do we get? Well, we get energy, attention, stimulation, information, and emotional support. Those are all part of the deal, according to Hill. And those with a network of close social ties tend to be happier, tend to be healthier, and more satisfied with life than those who are more isolated. So those are some of the benefits, and that's some of the consequences, right? So we went from need to consequence in a single slide. What do you think about that? So, 3 concepts ahead, so let me warn you here. First, we're going to talk a little bit about attachment style, right? And then we're going to talk a little bit about similarity versus dissimilarity, and this is one of my favorite aspects of attraction because it's kind of counterintuitive. And then we're going to talk about loneliness as promised. So what about attachment style? How many of you have taken child psychology or lifespan psychology? I'm a fan of taking either or both. I got to teach lifespan development at Columbus State quite a bit when I was there, and I really enjoyed teaching that class. It was required for nursing students, so about 2/3 of my class would be nursing students, and it was a kick. I mean, we had a lot of good times there. I don't teach it at Ohio State. I got enough on my plate here, so and I think there's people at Ohio State who are better qualified to teach it than I would be. So, attachment style. It's central to the study of child development, right? And what we find is quality of romantic relationship is linked with our attachment, our emotional bond to caregivers, such as our parents, depending on how we were raised during infancy and childhood. So childhood matters, but let me say this right up front, that what happened in childhood can be somewhat predictive of what happens in adulthood, but it's not a lock, it's not a guarantee. People are adaptable, they're flexible, and people can change. But on average, we find it relatively predictive. What do romantic partners do for us? They give us a secure base to return to and obtain comfort from in stressful times, at least in a good relationship. And this is maybe one of the qualities you look for in a partner. They're there when you need them, but they allow you the freedom to go out, explore, and develop yourself, but then, they're there that you can come back to and find security and consolation if you need it, or congratulations if it's available, right? We learn this attachment style as infants, and we use it as a model for adult relationships on average, right? So Ainsworth identified 3 attachment styles between infant and caregiver, and this has been modified somewhat since Ainsworth, and she used what was called what was that paradigm called? The strange situation paradigm, and it put an infant in a room with their caregiver, in this case their mother, because this was done in 1979, and a stranger would enter the room, and then the mother would leave, and the stranger would try to comfort the crying child because the mother had left. But what was critical to understanding this in the strange situation paradigm was what happens when mom comes back and how does the infant react. That's really kind of what was their dependent measure and what they wanted to observe. And basically when mom came back, if the infant displayed what was called a secure attachment style, there would be the parent would come back and the child would go, "Oh, mom, you're back." They're not verbal, right? But they'd go to their mother and they'd be comforted and they would quiet down quite readily from their stressful situation. Avoidant attachment styles, the caregiver is often distant or rejecting, and from that the infant suppresses the desire to be close to the caregiver. So the infant's crying because they were left, but then mom comes back and tries to comfort the infant, and it can be largely unsuccessful. And then ambivalent attachment style was kind of a catch-all, and this is the one that's been modified in future research, is inconsistently available or overbearing with affection. The infant might cling anxiously, but then because it's ambivalent, might fight against that closeness by pushing the caregiver away. Right? What does this mean? Well, Hayes and Shaver then examine the continuity between childhood attachment and romantic relationships. And securely attached infants are more likely to be securely attached to adult romantic partners. Now, again, I really want to say this is on average, but I always find this so ironic, because Sigmund Freud was one of those people who said men tend to marry their mothers, and it's like that son maternal relationship then tends to maybe play out. And there's no little support for what Freud said, other than maybe very tangential issues like this, right? Individuals with avoidant attachment style in childhood find it difficult to develop intimate relationships in adulthood. And it's often issues of trust that are at the heart of this, right? But individuals can revise the attachment styles in adulthood. Now I want to shift gears and I want to talk about attraction. And in the book they talked about proximity, they talked about similarity, they talked about all these other elements that lead to part of the attraction process. I want to talk for a moment about Byrne, because Byrne kind of took the opposite approach. So I find that fascinating and I enjoy the irony. Rather than similarity, Byrne says, yes, we do assess similarity, but before we assess similarity, we see someone out there and say, oh my God, look how similar they are to me. I think I'm attracted to them and I will approach them. And we don't say it quite like that, but you get the idea. Byrne says, even before that part of the cognitive process instigates, what really happens is dissimilarity equals avoidance or repulsion, and that is more automatic. So let's do a flow chart, because we haven't done many flow charts yet in this class, and this is people you meet. These are potential people that you could be attracted to, right? What Byrne's saying is almost automatically there's this dissimilarity filter that we encounter, right? So the question is, in true flow chart style, represented by a diamond, dissimilar is the question. Well, yeah, that looks pretty dissimilar, right? So yes, dissimilar, and that leads automatically to avoidance, so no further contact, right? So we tend not to mix with those that are different, that are not our own, because of this dissimilarity filter, according to Byrne, as part of the attraction process. Now, let's go the other way now, right? You ready? Okay, so we're going to go down, we're going to eliminate the yes response, and we're going to put the no response down here. Are they dissimilar? No, they're not dissimilar. Okay, well then, now comes the similarity filter, that is to assess or to evaluate the level of similarity. And let's say, oh, they're college students, check it out. But it's not my college, so we might say that represents kind of low similarity. In fact, these are anteaters, in case you don't know that. These are from UC Irvine. That's where President Drake and I both come from, as UC Irvine. And there's Pete the Anteater, hell of a mouth. Stop laughing. Remember, we all go to a school now that has, what, Brutus as a mascot, a semi-poisonous nut? All right, so teasing aside, right? But similarity is low, so what do we see then? Well, we see relative indifference. So there may be contact, there might not be, but we don't necessarily give a care in that regard. Now, let's say goodbye to them, and then let's answer the question, high similarity. Oh, there's a Buckeye, high similarity, go Bucks, right? OH. Thank you. IO. All right. We see the high similarity, and then we go to continued contact. Isn't that cool? So I like it because it kind of turns itself on its head, and notice that this, I think, has bigger ramifications, because people that we view as inherently dissimilar, and that is people tend to marry within their social class or be attracted within their social class. That is, wealthy people don't generally partner up with poor people, right? It may be that dissimilarity filter at work. When we see people not crossing racial boundaries, ethnic boundaries, they could be in part because of the dissimilarity filter that just prohibits it from the very beginning as a consideration. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the irony as much as I do. And now we just got to talk a little bit about loneliness, because failure to affiliate might then land us in the land of loneliness. And people who do not interact with others in close relationships may feel lonely. They may not, but this is one of the potential consequences. Who's big-time social psychologist that studied loneliness? You know the name. You know, Phil Zimbardo, he wrote the book on loneliness earlier in his career. You know, Phil Zimbardo, Stanford Prison demonstration. So he was a big researcher on both loneliness and shyness. Anyway, chronic loneliness is linked with impaired physical and mental health, and you can see that what we get from affiliation, all right, well, the lack of affiliation equals perhaps loneliness, and we can see that it might be linked with impaired physical and mental health. Men blame themselves for being lonely, and I'm just doing a little stereotype thing here based on some research, right? Men blame themselves for being lonely, so they'll make more of a dispositional attribution, whereas women blame external factors for their loneliness. That's a situational attribution, and isn't that interesting that we have a gender-based difference in attributions? Again, on average, let's not do too much gender stereotyping, right? Represented within this lecture. So adjustment strategies for reducing loneliness, what can be done? Well, make frequent social contacts as much as you can. Combat shyness and understand how shyness affects you. Get in touch with it if you're shy, and find ways to increment yourself away from shyness, right? It's not to go make a speech in front of a bunch of people, but maybe talk to someone when you normally feel a little anxious about doing so. Be assertive, and that is talk about what you need and what you want. That's one way to get there. I think one of the best pieces of advice to combat loneliness, to become popular, is to be a good listener. People love to be listened to, right? And this is the kind of listening where you ask someone a question, they tell you the answer, and you say, wow, that's really cool. Let me see if I understood or got you straight, right? And then you repeat back to them what they said in your own words, paraphrase it, and they'll go, wow, my God, they really listened to me. And often, many people don't feel like anyone listens to them. So if you actually listen to someone and demonstrate it by paraphrasing after they're finished, that can go a long way in making good relationships and good introductions. Okay. Next, let people get to know you, and that's self-disclose to the extent that you feel comfortable, but people feel good when you, in fact, open up to them, when you're willing to share or disclose to them. Hey, when it's argument time, when it's debate time, fight fair. Don't go with the low blows. Talk about ideas. Don't descend into personal insults. Tell yourself that you're worthy of friends. Maybe somehow you've gotten the idea in your self-concept that you're not worthy, and that's not true, because you are worthy of friends. So remind yourself of that. One thing which is not very helpful right now, but could be in the future because of the pandemic, right, is to find an on-campus job, because it's a great way to meet people with whom you have greater opportunities to interact, right? And then you can always make use of college counseling center services. That is to help you with these issues if the others don't seem to be working as well as you'd like. And that's about it for this one. Let's say hey to Jilly. She's helping me grade some papers. That are one of her favorite things to do. Back in the days of paper, we're not going to be doing that for another semester or two, right? But that's the way I used to do it. So y'all take care, and I'll talk to you later.